Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. I sat in my small rented apartment with the DNA report on my table. The paper was thin, but the words carried enough weight to split a life in half. 0% probability. Darren wasn't mine. The room felt silent, but my head was clear. I wasn't shocked. I wasn't angry. I just finally had proof for what my gut had been trying to tell me for months. 6 months earlier, Cheryl started acting different. She kept her phone upside down, walked into other rooms to take calls, and claimed she had urgent work meetings every few nights. Whenever I asked simple questions, she snapped fast, like she was always waiting for a fight. I tried to keep things calm, thinking the stress would pass, but the tension grew heavier every week. The worst turning point came during an argument about Darren. Cheryl told me she was taking him to her cousin's place for a full week. She didn't ask, she announced it. I told her I took days off work so I could spend time with him, and she blew up instantly. "You're smothering him," she shouted. "You want control over everything I do." I stood still while she paced around the living room. I wasn't yelling, but she kept raising her voice like she needed the noise to push me back. Then she stopped, turned, smiled. Not a warm smile, a sharp, pleased smirk like she held a secret she had been dying to use. "You know what? Fine. Let's just say it," she said. "The baby isn't yours, and you can't do anything." The way she said it, calm, certain, almost proud. She looked straight at me as if she expected me to fall apart on the spot. What she didn't know was that I had my phone recording in my pocket. A coworker once warned me to document arguments when things at home felt hostile. I never expected to use that advice like this. Back in the present, I placed the DNA result beside the recording file on my laptop. Cheryl thought that smirk was the end of the story. It was actually the start. After that argument, Cheryl waited for a reaction. She stared at me like she expected shouting, breaking, begging, something dramatic. Instead, I gave her one quiet word. "All right." Her expression cracked for a moment. Confusion slipped through the confidence she tried to hold, but I didn't give her time to rebuild it. I walked past her and went to bed without another sound. She followed me halfway down the hallway, asking if that was seriously all I had to say. I didn't turn around. Over the next few days, I kept my movements measured. I didn't accuse her, didn't bring up the smirk, didn't mention Darren. I let her think the argument faded away. Meanwhile, I copied bank statements, photographed important documents, forwarded emails to a secure folder, and stored every bit of digital evidence in a separate drive. I didn't want surprises later. During lunch breaks, I met with Isaac. We'd known each other since college, and he worked in family law now. He listened while I explained everything: Cheryl's behavior, the recording, the line she threw at me. He didn't rush to react. "Do not confront her again," he said. "Stay calm. Get a proper DNA test. You have a strong start, but you need clear evidence." I nodded. Isaac didn't handle cases like mine directly, but he understood the process. Before we left, he told me exactly where to go and how to make sure the results would hold up if things escalated. The next day, I went to a private clinic and gave a sample. I kept everything quiet, routine, controlled. Cheryl attempted a soft restart at home. She cooked more, asked about my day, even tried to sit close on the couch. Everything felt like a performance built to cover her slip. She avoided mentioning the argument completely, but she watched me carefully, as if waiting for signs I believed her lie. I didn't give her any. Quietly, I packed a small bag and moved it to a short-term rental near my workplace. I didn't plan to leave abruptly, but I wanted an exit ready. If the DNA test came back negative, I wasn't staying in that house another night. All that remained was proof. 3 days later, the DNA results arrived on a Thursday morning while I was at my rental. I opened the envelope slowly, even though I already knew what it would say. The numbers were clear. Darren carried none of my DNA. Not a trace. I stared at the page for a few seconds, folded it once, and placed it into a folder labeled Case. No shouting, no heartbreak. Just confirmation. Cheryl's smirk that night wasn't anger. It was truth slipping out because she thought I had no way to fight back. That afternoon, I met with Melissa, a family law attorney Isaac had recommended. He trusted her with cases like mine, and after one conversation, I understood why. She had a calm presence and spoke with precision. I explained everything from the argument to the DNA test I had done at the clinic. She listened without interrupting, then laid out her plan. "We file for divorce immediately," she said. We request a court-ordered paternity test to establish it officially on record. Then we pursue reimbursement. You have strong evidence." I nodded. She prepared the documents. I signed without hesitation. Cheryl was served at our house 2 days later. My phone lit up minutes after. Then again, calls, texts, missed calls, voice messages. When I didn't respond, she escalated. Anger first, then confusion, then fear. Finally, I answered one call. "Why did you file for divorce?" Cheryl's voice trembled. "You know why," I said. "That thing I said, I didn't mean it. I was upset. Darren is yours." "I have the lab results," I replied. "And the recording." Silence. Then panic. "You recorded me? Samuel, you can't use that. You're destroying our family." I didn't respond. She tried to switch tactics. "Listen, we can fix this. We can go to counseling. Just take the divorce back." "No," I said. "We're done." She screamed something I couldn't make out, then hung up. Later, mutual friends told me she was calling everyone, saying I'd lost my mind and was abandoning my son. She painted the picture fast, trying to get ahead of the truth. Her attorney reached out next, asking if I'd consider a settlement where I remained Darren's legal father. I gave a simple answer: no. That weekend, I moved completely out of the house. What came next would not be quick, but it would be final. The first hearing took place 2 weeks later. Cheryl arrived in a conservative dress, holding documents close to her chest like a shield. Her attorney spoke first, insisting I had abandoned Darren without warning and created emotional strain. He tried to frame my move as impulsive and cruel. I didn't react. Melissa stood beside me with her usual composed posture. When it was our turn, Melissa requested a court-ordered paternity test. She referenced the DNA test I had already completed at a clinic to demonstrate why formal verification was necessary. Cheryl's attorney objected, arguing it was unnecessary and harmful to Darren. Judge Morales raised a hand, cutting him off. She asked Cheryl one direct question: "Do you object to establishing paternity through a standard medical procedure?" Cheryl hesitated. "Darren has been very stressed," she said. "I don't want him poked by needles." "It's a cheek swab," Melissa replied. Judge Morales exhaled slowly. "Test is ordered. Complete it within 10 days. Cheryl glanced at me with a mix of fear and defiance, as if she still hoped the court would bend. I didn't look away. Over the next week, Cheryl delayed the appointment 3 times. First, Darren was sick. Then she claimed she lost the appointment notice. Then she said the clinic made a mistake with scheduling. Melissa documented every excuse and forwarded them to the judge. On the 10th day, Judge Morales issued a warning: complete the test that afternoon or face sanctions. Cheryl finally complied. The results arrived 3 days later. 0% paternity. Again. Cheryl didn't speak when she saw the findings. She stepped out of the hallway and collapsed onto a bench. Her hands shook as she whispered, "You're trying to take everything from me." I walked past without answering. During the settlement meeting later that week, Cheryl's attorney offered terms. She would keep the house, I would remain Darren's legal father, and I would pay reduced support. Melissa didn't blink. "No," she said. "Terminate paternity, separate assets cleanly, and drop all support requests." Cheryl refused. She insisted she could win at trial, claiming a judge would never destroy a family. Judge Morales set the trial date. Cheryl still believed she could outrun the truth. She couldn't. Trial began on a cloudy Monday morning. Cheryl walked in dressed like she was attending a church meeting. Plain blouse, soft makeup, hair tied back neatly. She held a framed picture of Darren tucked against her arm, a prop meant to shape the room before anyone spoke. Her attorney opened with emotion. He told the court I was reacting out of pride, that I was discarding a child I raised for years, and that Cheryl had acted in fear, not deception. He repeated the word family like it was a shield strong enough to deflect facts. Cheryl was called to the stand first. She kept her tone quiet, shaky, almost fragile. She described our marriage as strained, claimed she felt alone, and said she made one mistake during a difficult period. Then she insisted she always believed Darren was mine. "I was terrified Samuel would leave if he knew there was a chance," she said. "I wanted to protect our home." Her voice trembled. A few people in the room nodded sympathetically. That was her strength. She could shift into a victim instantly when the pressure rose. Then Melissa stood. She approached slowly, holding a thin folder. "Mrs. Turner," Melissa said, Is it true you kept your phone hidden from your husband for months? Cheryl swallowed. I needed privacy. For what? Work calls. Melissa opened the folder. You told a friend in a message, if Darren isn't Samuel's, I'm done. Is that a work call? Cheryl froze, eyes darting toward her attorney. I was upset, she muttered. People vent. Melissa continued. Did you or did you not smirk at your husband and tell him the baby isn't yours and you can't do anything? Cheryl's breath caught. I was angry. So you admit you said it? Melissa asked. It was just words, Cheryl whispered. Words based on fear, her attorney added quickly. Melissa didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on Cheryl. Mrs. Turner, were you lying during that argument, or are you lying today? Cheryl didn't answer. The silence felt heavy enough to fill the entire courtroom. Her attorney shifted in his chair, clearly realizing the narrative he built was cracking. By the time court adjourned for the day, Cheryl's confident mask was nowhere to be found. The next day would be my turn. Day 2 started quieter. Cheryl avoided looking at me when we entered the courtroom. Her hands trembled slightly as she sat beside her attorney. The confidence she carried earlier had drained out of her completely. Melissa called me to the stand shortly after the session opened. I answered every question in a steady voice. There was no anger in my tone, only facts. I explained the months of strange behavior, the secrecy with her phone, the late nights, and the argument where everything slipped. I told the court about the DNA test I had done at a clinic and the court-ordered test confirming the truth. Her attorney crossed his arms and stepped up. Mr. Turner, he said, you claim you cared about Darren. How do you walk away from him so easily? I didn't walk away easily, I said. I learned my entire understanding of our family was built on a lie. So you stopped being a father just because you're hurt? I stopped because Cheryl removed me from that role the moment she hid the truth. He frowned, hunting for an angle. You could still choose to be in Darren's life. That choice was taken from me before I ever knew it existed. The attorney paused, irritated by how calmly I answered. He tried again. You're seeking reimbursement, money. Isn't that the real motive? No, I replied. The motive is accountability. The room grew still. Melissa then introduced the forensic accountant. He presented a simple, clear breakdown. Medical bills, childcare costs, insurance payments, expenses across several years. Nothing inflated, nothing dramatic, just numbers showing the financial impact of deception. Then Melissa looked toward Judge Morales. Your Honor, with permission, we will play the recorded statement. Cheryl's shoulders tensed immediately. Her attorney raised an objection, but Melissa had already filed the authentication paperwork. The judge allowed it. I heard the argument again through the speakers, my voice tight, her voice sharp, then the line that shifted my entire life. The baby isn't yours, and you can't do anything. The tone was unmistakable, steady, confident, almost satisfied. The courtroom reacted. A quiet exhale, a few heads turning toward Cheryl. She stared at her lap, eyes wet but without any explanation left to give. Melissa closed the day with a clear argument. This case was not about emotion, but about truth and conduct. Judge Morales said she would issue a written decision soon. For the first time in months, I felt the weight on my shoulders ease. 3 weeks later, we returned to court for the final ruling. The room felt heavier than before, as if everyone sensed what was coming. Cheryl sat with her mother this time. Both looked drained, not polished like earlier hearings. Cheryl kept her eyes on the table, and her mother stared at me with open hostility. Judge Morales entered, adjusted her glasses, and began reading from a prepared document. Her voice was calm but firm. First, she said, legal paternity is disestablished. Mr. Samuel Turner is not the biological father of Darren Turner. Cheryl covered her face with her hands. Second, the judge continued, Mr. Turner's name shall be removed from the birth certificate. No reaction from me. I kept still, listening. Third, there will be no child support, no custody, and no visitation obligations for Mr. Turner. All parental rights and responsibilities are terminated. Cheryl shook her head slowly, almost as if she didn't hear correctly. Fourth, Mrs. Turner is ordered to reimburse a portion of the documented expenses over a structured payment plan approved by the court. Cheryl looked up, tears streaking down her cheeks. Your Honor, please. I can't. The judge raised a hand. This is the consequence of your actions, Mrs. Turner. Lastly, each party will retain their own premarital assets. Mrs. Turner will not receive compensation from Mr. Turner's retirement account or home equity. When the judge finished, silence filled the room. Cheryl's mother snapped first. "This is cruel! You're ruining her life!" she yelled. The bailiff moved forward, warning her to calm down. Cheryl grabbed her arm and whispered something, trying to pull her back into her seat, but the damage was done. Judge Morales ended the session immediately. Outside the courtroom, Cheryl collapsed on a bench. Her mother hovered beside her, shaking with anger. I walked past them without slowing. Over the next few weeks, word reached me through acquaintances. Cheryl lost her job after missing too many days for court. She moved into her mother's small apartment because she couldn't afford rent. Her car broke down, and she didn't have enough savings to fix it. She even tried filing for bankruptcy to erase the judgment, but the court rejected it due to the nature of the debt. Her brother sent me a threatening message one night. I forwarded it to the police and was granted a restraining order the following week. The only part that still stung was the news that Darren kept asking why Daddy wasn't there anymore. Cheryl created that wound. I wasn't the one who cut it. Months passed quietly after the ruling. I settled into a smaller apartment across town, a place without echoes from my old life. I kept my routines. Simple. Work, gym, occasional dinners with Isaac. The noise I carried for years faded piece by piece. When everything exploded, I expected to feel untethered. But the opposite happened. My world felt clearer without Cheryl's chaos in it. Work came easier once the pressure lifted. I took on extra projects when things at home were unraveling, and my manager noticed. 3 months after the trial, he called me into his office. "You've been steady under pressure," he said. "We're promoting you." I accepted with a simple nod. Stability felt good. I didn't jump into dating right away. Trust wasn't something I could offer freely, and I refused to pretend otherwise. Eventually, I met someone for coffee a few times, but I kept it slow. No rush, no forced steps. I wanted to rebuild with intention, not desperation. Occasionally, when I heard a child cry in a store or saw a boy Darren's age run down a sidewalk, something in my chest tightened. Not pain, just reflex. But the instinct faded gradually, replaced by acceptance. Every month, the court sent me a notice confirming Cheryl's required payment. They were small, but consistent. Those envelopes weren't about money. They were reminders that truth, once spoken out loud, doesn't vanish. Cheryl's life had changed sharply. She worked fewer hours and avoided social events. Friends who once defended her slowly drifted away as the details became clearer. She had built her world on secrets, and when they cracked, the collapse was complete. One evening, she sent me a brief message from an unknown number. "Can we talk? For Darren's sake." I blocked it immediately. I wasn't cruel. I was done. Some nights, I would think back to that argument in our living room, the moment she smirked and told me, "The baby isn't yours, and you can't do anything." She believed she owned the truth that night. She believed she owned the power. I learned something important. Power shifts when you stand up quietly, gather facts, and walk your path without fear. She said I couldn't do anything. I proved I could. Thank you for watching.